From the headquarters of Ramsey Solutions, this is EntreLeadership. I'm your host, Dave Ramsey, with over 30 years of experience leading in the trenches right alongside you. Most leaders hate having difficult conversations with a team member. But trust me, avoiding the hard conversations doesn't protect your team. It paralyzes it. So the best leaders out there don't run from this. They lean in. That's why today, John Felkins from the EntreLeadership team and one of my board members, Brendan Wochko, will show you exactly how our team has the kind of tough conversations that solve problems, grow trust, and make the business stronger.
All right, thanks, Dave. Well, Brendan, we have this conversation all the time about difficult conversations, but I know all of your work on that really kind of started with a story, didn't it? Your own experience.
Yeah. It's like a fun, not fun story, right?
It's fun now.
It's fun now. It wasn't in the moment.
Right.
Yeah, so like one night, my wife and I are sitting on the couch, at her house. It's totally normal. She gets a text message, right? And I kind of barely noticed she got the text message until, when I did notice, she's kind of like staring at her phone. And, something about that moment, you could kind of just feel like the air drain out of the room, right? And she didn't say anything to me. She just kind of turns and looks. I grab the phone, I look at it, and my wife had gotten a text message from a woman named Ann.
Okay.
And I had fired Ann's husband that morning. And it was just like, the text message was just like, hey, that's all it said. So you didn't really know what was coming next,
right?
And, like, you get the three little bubbles that are telling you on the text message thing, the person on the other end is sending like a really long message.
Yeah.
And so at this point, my wife and I are both like, sitting there like staring at her phone, like what the heck's going to happen next? What's the next message that's going to come through?
Right.
And when the message came through, it was like not what we expected. She basically said, hey, I know our husbands have just walked a really tough road together.
Right.
But I feel like it was handled really well, and I just want to, communicate that I'm grateful for that and want to know if we can still be friends. Yeah.
Okay, that could have gone a very different direction.
It could have gone a very different direction, and there were like a bunch of lessons in that, right? Like I think at that point of my leadership experience, I was like 10 years into leadership at that point.
Okay.
And what was interesting is I kind of walked away from that evening, and I was like, how is it that I've been doing this leadership thing for 10 years and I've walked through a bunch of uncomfortable conversations, but I've never had one in 10 years that actually went that well.
Yeah.
And so it really caused me to kind of dive into that and say, what was different this time?
Mm-hmm.
And, I think the thing that I took from it, in the big picture was the reason why uncomfortable conversations are so hard for leaders is because it's a very unmodeled skill.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to model for other people what's never been modeled for you.
Yeah.
And when it comes to uncomfortable conversations, I feel like they're probably the hardest skill in leadership. Not because they're actually hard, it's because there's just not a model. Nobody's told you how to do it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of feelings around it. So walking into uncomfortable conversations is really hard.
But so what you're talking about, it's never been modeled for you. A lot of people don't have that model. That's in fact what you've created. Right?
Yeah.
This idea of having a written plan. And
the plan itself is really, it is a written plan. That's the important thing.
Yeah.
And lots of leaders can be really resistant to the idea of actually walking into an uncomfortable conversation with a written plan.
Why do you think that is?
I think the main reason that they get uncomfortable with the idea, because they're worried that if they walk into a conversation like that with a written plan, it's going to look like they don't know what they're doing. But no, what I tell leaders all the time is, the only thing that's worse than not looking like you know what you're doing is actually not knowing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? So, if you're going to have an uncomfortable conversation, there are some people that walk into them very confident. Yeah. And honestly, most people that walk into uncomfortable conversations confidently don't realize they're probably doing them very wrong. And the people that walk into uncomfortable conversations actually uncomfortable, the good news is they probably have a really high potential to do it right.
Yeah.
But because they're so nervous in the moment, they don't know what to do, and they bob and weave and waste time and confuse the other person and make a mess.
Yeah.
And it's just better to walk in with an actual script. So that's what we learned here at Ramsey. Like, we've got hundreds of leaders here at Ramsey.
Now, I'm going to stop you real quick. When you say script,
yeah.
Do you mean literally like you walk in and I'm going to read this to you as we go through this? Or do you mean something
I think it depends on your level of nerves.
Okay.
Right? Like if you're paralyzed nervous, you could walk in there and use it like a script and literally just read it.
Yeah.
But I would say for people that have, some reps underneath their belt and they're not losing a full night of sleep before, having an uncomfortable conversation, is more of a guide.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. They're not just making it up on the fly. They've got something to follow.
But the plan does a good job of like helping you figure out like what's the intensity of the conversation that you have to have. Like how do you keep it short? So when you think about an uncomfortable conversation, like what are the ingredients of a great one?
Yeah.
Like you got to create a ton of clarity. That's one thing that people really get wrong. Is they don't do a good job of like actually clarifying the problem, making it crystal clear. And then they also honestly really struggle with the amount of time that they spend. So I do this by nature. I'm like a coach by nature. So I want to sit down with somebody and, give them all the examples of, how I've made similar mistakes and what they could do better and talking about all the dimensions of the problem and, hey, leadership is tough. And the truth is that the person on the other end of the uncomfortable conversation, like they're, if you're not careful, they're just back in their amygdala, the fight or flight response, and all they're doing is just scanning the conversation for the words "you're fired."
Okay.
And so you got to have some good strategies to like overcome that. And the best strategy for that is keep the conversation short. A lot of people think that that's undignified, but the best way to create a dignified, uncomfortable conversation is for it to be short and very clear.
It sounds to me like, and I think my experience is what you're fighting against is all of those emotions, and you got to be very concise, very targeted to get those important words through to the person, right? You're not just winging it, right? It's got to be super intentional. How do you start? How do you get that conversation started?
Well, and I think actually starting is one of the most important points because people get very awkward. It's awkward on the other person's part and it's awkward on your part. Like if you put yourself in the other person's shoes, they're getting like some ambiguous meeting called. They don't know what it's about.
Right.
They might
quick update or something.
Quick connect.
Yeah, quick connect.
It's called on their calendar or whatever. And they're like, and so they don't really know what it's about.
Yeah.
They're walking in with some nerves. You've got some nerves too. And the biggest mistake that people make is they just start with small talk. They'll be, talk about the weather or like, hey, how's the family doing? The deal is like, if you don't want someone to have that fight or flight response to an uncomfortable conversation, like right off the bat, the moment they sit down, you have got to address the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And you basically, like the way that I start them is somebody will sit down and I'll say, let's call the person Bob, I'll say like, hey, Bob, thanks for sitting down with me. I just want to let you know up front that, this is what we're about to have is a pretty uncomfortable conversation, but I want to let you know that nobody's going to lose their job today.
Level set.
Right there in one sentence, you've managed their expectations that it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, and you have told them that the outcome of the situation is not like the worst case scenario. You're kind of helping them regulate, keeping them out of that fight or flight response.
Yep.
And there's ways if they go to the fight or flight response to kind of yank them back from it too. But
that's a super good point. And I know you've got a ton on this, but one other thing I want to make sure you hit is this idea of hurt versus harm. Talk about that a little bit, because I think that's critical.
Yeah, so I think one of the reasons why leaders tend to avoid uncomfortable conversations is because they're afraid of like abusing their authority. And so the thing that I felt like really equipped me to do a better job at uncomfortable conversations is the day that I realized that like hurt and harm aren't the same thing.
Okay.
And so a lot of people are like, well, that sounds like a distinction without a difference, right? But there is a difference.
I'm listening.
Like hurt is when you address someone's behavior, like I observed you doing a thing.
Okay.
You're not calling them as a person into question. You're not calling their character into question. You're not calling their identity into question. It's not like a low dig.
Okay.
You're just talking about the behavior that you observed, right?
Okay.
Now that's going to hurt. Like there's no version of like accountability and consequences that doesn't sting a little bit, right?
Right.
But if you focus on the behavior, at worst you're going to hurt them. But if you go down the road of like talking about them as a person and who they are, that's harm. And the reality is like once you kind of, I call that the lightning rod of conflict.
The lightning rod of conflict.
The lightning rod of conflict. Like if you accidentally go, say something that's harmful, the reality is like right then and there, the relationship's kind of over.
Okay.
Or at best, the relationship's
right?
just damaged or changed, right? That's one of the things that I see leaders make huge mistakes on because they wait too long to have an uncomfortable conversation. They're all emotionally loaded, like they're at a 9 of 10,
right?
Instead of a 2 of 10, and they just like almost kind of go for the jugular. They get into like identity stuff, like you're not good enough at your job. And I don't think you have the skills to do this.
Yeah.
And, they get into stuff that's like really personally judgmental instead of doing the thing that the person needs.
Yeah, because that's not help. Not only is that bad, it's not helpful.
No. Yeah, I remember early on in my career, I had a CEO tell me, he said that he felt like he was asking me to be 3 inches shorter. He said that like the things I'm asking you to do, I don't feel like you're capable of doing. And that was the first conversation.
Oh, wow.
And what
do you do with that?
Well, the problem is you can't.
Right.
Like when you frame that up some way, it's like, well, like you're right. I can't change my height. So you're telling me right off the bat, the first time that I can't do it.
Right.
Like, of course I'm just going to check out. Of course this is going to end poorly.
Yeah.
So that's harm.
Yeah.
Right. And so you want to keep feedback focused on people's actual behavior.
Okay. Awesome. If there's just one thing that you would want people to take away, just thematically over the whole thing, what would your advice be?
Just like, don't wing it. I've seen lots of uncomfortable conversations go well. I've seen lots of them go poorly. Almost every time they go poorly, it's the result of winging it.
Okay.
Walking in with a written plan, it is the best way to show dignity to the other person. And if you can keep dignity high, you're highly likely to have a good, uncomfortable conversation.
Way better odds.
Yeah, way better odds. Yeah.
I appreciate that, Brendan. And I know you've actually developed a lot of material on this, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
So make sure that you click on the link in the show notes to get all of the resources Brendan has developed on this if you want more help.
Look, if all this gives you heartburn, I know it isn't easy, but it is part of the job. And when you do it the right way, your team gets better, problems get solved, expectations get clear, and people either step up or step out, both of which are wins. But the real magic happens when your team doesn't just survive those tough talks, they trust you more because of them. That kind of trust is the foundation of a strong culture, one people want to be a part of. If you want more content to help grow yourself and your business, be sure to like this video or podcast and subscribe. I'm Dave Ramsey. Thanks for being with us on EntreLeadership.